Hello, we are the Justified Ancients of Ashai. I am Jonik Caliph,
And I'm esoteric.
and today we're talking about episode 6 of season 1 of The Night of the Seven Kingdoms. In this episode, there was the Trial of Seven. So that supposedly means that the gods have chosen that Duncan was innocent. The gods showed their will. Yes, the gods have spoken on between Duncan and Arian. And a lot of the characters are left to kind of pick up the pieces of what does that mean? Why did the gods do what they did? Some people seem to be okay with that, like Lionel Baratheon. And other people seem to have a little bit of guilt. And we're going to discuss those themes today. So let's start off with Lionel. And he says, any dead dragon is a good dragon.
I definitely think not only does he not mind, if anything, he thinks that was good that it happened, and also that the gods were right for doing so.
Yes, because he says the gods don't favor a fraud.
Yeah.
But that brings us to the next line, which is Duncan saying, well, why'd they favor me?
Before we get on to what Duncan is thinking, he was thinking Baelor was a fraud because he was going on about how Baelor didn't risk anything and how basically, he set the match up to fight against the King's Guard, which were sworn not to hurt him. And so in essence, why is Duncan so sad about their loss? Because Duncan was kind of like moping around and extremely feeling bad and guilty about the events. And Baratheon was like getting mad at him because Baratheon wanted to party. This was a great time for him. He really, really enjoyed the trial by seven. And, he wants Duncan to follow him to Storm's End. And Duncan's basically like, are you crazy? And he said, Gods be good or Gods be damned. Like, he just died for me. He gave his life for me and you're complaining about him. And that's when Lionel was like, no, I gave for you. And two other people gave their life for you. Baelor went in there thinking he was not risking his life. So this is why he was saying that the gods judged him. And even Baelor himself, before the battle, Robert Riesling even said to him, do you think that's honorable, sir? The way he was planning on fighting. And Baelor was like, well, the gods will judge me for that. And so in Baratheon's opinion, they judged him to be a fraud. And so that's when Duncan's sitting there saying, well, then why did they favor me?
I don't feel like any of the main characters that we're going to discuss are particularly religious. No. They don't seem to have a strong influence or belief in the gods. But it's like at this moment in this time, kind of everybody brings up the gods.
Because the trial was what it was supposed to be.
Yes. And so everybody kind of seems to be on this God thing or putting the gods into the moment, even though it doesn't seem to fit. Like the gods are only convenient at times.
Yeah, maybe in a time of crisis, people think about the gods. And then throughout their day-to-day lives, they're not thinking about God. When people are having a moment like that, then they consider, well, could this be what the gods? Because what's the explanation of why certain things would happen?
As I discussed in my short about the gods being dead, I feel like the gods are just a convenience for people. It's a way for them to kind of, it's just convenient when they need to. And like in this episode, it can be comforting, but it's more of a convenience. Like Baratheon, who clearly has no use for the gods, seems to use that as like he thought that Baelor was a fraud. And he's like, see, the gods say it too. But he's just using that to kind of confirm what he already believes.
So there's two things in the reaction to Duncan saying, well, then why did the gods favor me? Lionel Baratheon's response was, they didn't favor you. This is a mockery. And I thought that's such an interesting comment. Like, why is he saying that? It's a mockery. Was that a prissy comment? Like, this is a bad joke that you live and these other three died. It's a mockery of how life should be. Like, what did Duncan, who's never fought before, so you have a great war hero, and Humphrey Harding was a champion at the tourney. And it's like, these guys fall and you live. It's a mockery of how things should be. I thought that was a very interesting comment.
Yeah, that's true. It could be, it's not them favoring you. This is them showing disfavor on Baelor. And
well, I took it as, and then the second thing is we get insight that maybe he was never truly knighted.
Yes. Which we kind of believed all along. He was kind of acting that way. And so he certainly has the imposter syndrome, right? He thinks he's a fraud. Mm-hmm. He thinks, and everybody should know it. Everybody should have known it. Everybody should have known it. And this trial should have revealed how much of a fraud he was. Certainly more than the guy who's the opposite of a fraud, right? Baylor is the opposite. He is the real thing, as legit of a, true knight, a true leader, a great man. As he embodied all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Throughout the season, we've seen Dunk doubt himself. He first time we saw that was with the first indecent proposal, where he wasn't sure if this was his best or only chance at actually coming away successful in the tournament, mm-hmm. which he needed to do, is maybe he had to take an offer to throw a match. And I think something that's interesting too is he came into this tournament, in the season going, with all these ideas about how knights are and how, the rulers are and how things should be. And we see all of that get crushed, right? All of it get washed away. I don't think he ever thought very highly of himself, mm-hmm. but he thought highly of these other things. And so when these other things start falling one by one, and even where he says, there's no true honorable knights to fight for me, like in his mind, Baylor shouldn't have even had to do this. But he is all of these thoughts he had have fallen. So everything he did believe in is now crushed. So certainly he's going to have doubts, and it's going to compound on his already challenging beliefs about himself, his own abilities, and what his purpose is.
I mean, even when you think about his doubts with taking on Egg, before he even knew he was a prince, his thought process was, taking him on as a squire to a hedge knight isn't doing any favors for the boy. What can I offer him? What can I do for him? I don't even know how I'm going to feed and take care of myself or what I'm doing, let alone, let someone be my squire. So he had tremendous doubts about that, about taking on a squire. So I feel like throughout this whole entire season, you can see it kind of like him slowly realizing how little he knows, slowly realizing that what he thought is not real. Like his whole worldview is falling apart, which makes him feel even worse and more insecure, to the point where he is offered to be a knight officially. Maekar asks him to, pledge his sword to him, and he says no. And I think he's saying no because of the guilt he's feeling, because of the doubt he's feeling, because he's so horrible that I'm just like a bad, dark omen to anyone who's around me, and so no one should be by me. And I think that's why he denied Lionel, because Lionel offered him to go to Storm's End with him. And I think he denied Lionel for the same reason. Like, you don't want to be around me, like I'm no good. I feel like for most of this episode, he's sitting there saying, like, feeling really down on himself and thinking, well, why did I survive? Because he's thinking all these horrible things about himself. And yet Baylor, who is supposed to be the next greatest king, the gods chose to disfavor.
One of the point I'd like to bring up is that Duncan definitely, he questioned why Arlen didn't make him a knight, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that introduced a lot of the doubt. Like, is there some reason Arlen didn't do it? Did he doubt Duncan? Did he think he wasn't ready? Did he think he just wasn't worthy? But he certainly had some doubt, like he didn't know.
Yeah.
And so I think that some of those memories brought back in this episode kind of shows you how, that Arlen did no favors for Duncan's doubt and his confidence, especially since we know that Arlen knew he was dying.
Yeah.
He knew that his days were limited, and yet he still didn't knight Duncan.
One thing about Duncan is that he feels like everybody is going to look at him. Like he said he wanted to be remembered at the beginning of the tournament. I want songs to be sung about me. And now he's like, oh, I'm going to be remembered as the guy who got, Prince Baylor killed. And for the rest of my life, is that what I'm going to be known for? And every time someone looks at me, they're thinking, it's his fault he's dead. And so.
Yeah, so I think Duncan wanted to be famous and turned out to be infamous. He talks to Maekar and says, I sit under the tree and wonder something to the effect of, if I had just lost my hand and foot, if I was just declared guilty and lost my hand and foot, would that not have been better than Baylor dying.
Yeah.
And I feel like maybe there's some purpose that my hand and foot can serve that could somehow possibly be better.
Mhm.
And the interesting thing that Maekar responds to is he responds with, "And what did your tree tell you?" And that's interesting because as we're talking about religion and so forth,
Yeah.
there's the old religion of the tree, and we've seen in this series the tree has kind of been very symbolic,
Yeah.
right? And so Maekar is being kind of flippant about it, but the tree has been a very symbolic, and it's on his sigil.
Mhm.
So the tree is very important, and it is, its protection, and its wisdom, and its serendipity a little bit too, and that surely
Nobody
that would
had to
have been
die.
better.
Nobody
Yes.
had to die.
Nobody had to die for him. Yes.
That leads us to Baylor's brother, because Maekar is actually the one who gave the death blow to his brother. He really cared about his brother. I do think he looks devastated by the loss of his brother. And he also is going through the same guilt right now, thinking everyone's going to say forever that I killed my brother.
And that he meant to do it.
Yeah.
Maekar says, "Some will say that I meant to kill my brother, and the gods will know it's a lie." Again, this is a guy that treated the gods as like, oh, when we were talking about the trial of the seven, like he just wasn't into it. But now he's like, oh, the gods will know the truth, but the people won't.
Yeah.
And the people are what matters here, because they're the ones that are going to be, they're spitting on his name and blaming him for everything.
He said, every time something goes wrong in the kingdom, they're going to blame me, because they're going to say Baylor would have done it better, and he killed Baylor, and so it's his fault forever.
I think a little bit that Maekar believes that too, right? Whatever situations come up, that whatever decisions have to be made, Baylor probably would have made a better decision than me.
Well, the bottom line is that it kind of is a little bit of Maker's fault that he's dead. I think he's right to feel guilty. Whereas Duncan, I feel like shouldn't feel guilty because Baylor volunteered himself for that. But Maekar, it was his son who was attacking a lady. And that made Duncan have to get involved with his piece of shit son to put his son in his place. Who should have been put in the son in the place? Who should have raised his son not to go out into the kingdom and hurt girls? That is Maker's raising of his son. Baylor's son doesn't go around harassing the civilians of the kingdom. From all thing I saw is that Baylor handles himself like a prince.
And he does talk about his kids and talk about Egg. And he says, Egg's my last, basically my last son. And it's almost like he recognizes that Arian is lost cause. He's going to send him east.
East to Essos.
And Darian is just a worthless drunk.
Yeah.
So it's almost like those are gone.
Even if Darian kept an eye on Egg properly, Duncan and Egg would have never met, and none of this would have happened. So it is Maekar's, it's their deficits that led ultimately to Baylor's death. Duncan is kind of like, you're right, and as a matter of fact, I will take your offer to Squire, had to have Egg as a Squire, but not around you and not around your family, basically. Like, I need to get him away from you. That's like how terrible you guys are. Like, if he has any chance of being a decent person, he has to get far away from you. And Maekar in the beginning is, offended by that, or maybe he's just straight up offended by it. But Duncan says something like, but Darren never slept in a ditch, and Arian had nothing but fresh steak every day that's nice and bloody. He never had to have hard salt beef. So he was pointing out that because Maekar's like, I can't let a prince live on the streets like that. He's blood of the dragon. And Duncan is like, yeah, but that's why they are the way they are. And he is like, Egg needs a firm hand. And in a princeling doesn't get a firm hand, he's going to try to get him to act right.
Do you think that Maekar has any guilt about his wife dying and the hole that's caused in his family?
Maybe his wife has just died recently, and that's obviously, maybe that is affecting everybody and kind of making them behave worse. I don't know, but it makes sense that it would, and that possibly he feels guilty because he can't take the place of two parents, and he can't fill in for the mother. It's not possible. Did we talk about Darian's guilt yet?
No.
Maybe he felt bad for losing Egg and not paying attention to Egg as he should have, and so he was trying to like make up for that, and wanted to do what was best for Egg. He went up to Duncan and tried to get Duncan to take him back, to take Egg on, and he gave him, because this is very important, because he's the one who convinced Duncan by letting him know about Arian, opened up Duncan's eyes and turned the whole episode around. He's turned down being a knight, he's turned down taking a squire, but I think Darren's guilt about not being there for his brothers. He's the eldest brother, and the mother has just died. And usually when a parent passes, when they have young children, the eldest children, pick up the slack. Maybe he hasn't been there for Egg, and he sees Egg deteriorating like he saw Arian deteriorate. And he lets Duncan be aware of this. And that changes Duncan's mind that he can maybe do something for people that is good. And that is to take Egg as a squire and help him.
And I think that it's interesting that when we talk about things like guilt, that there are two characters who use guilt. Mm-hmm. They both do it to Duncan. Yes. Right? Egg tries to do it and say, "Oh, maybe you weren't the knight I thought you were." And then Darren comes and he does it much more subtly and much more effectively, because he's the one that gets him to change his mind, saying, if you don't do something, then Egg will probably turn out to be like his brother.
Not only people who use guilt, but those who feel no guilt whatsoever. I don't think Egg feels any guilt for anything that has occurred. At all. And as a matter of fact, we know he doesn't, because what does he do? He does the very same thing he did in the first episode. And if he felt guilty for running away and dropping a bomb on Duncan's life by becoming his squire and dragging him in to the family drama, which killed the prince and almost killed Duncan, he doesn't show any guilt about that, because at the very last scene of the episode, he once again lies and says, "My dad said I could go with you." And that's totally not true. So if he felt guilty, would he do that? I don't think so. I don't think he feels any guilt whatsoever.
And who's the other person that doesn't feel guilt?
Fossaway.
Well, okay, so Fossaway, like Baratheon, also thinks the only good dragon is a dead dragon.
Yeah.
So I don't think he minds per se that Baelor died. And things turned out really well for him. So I think on whole, he doesn't have a lot to. So yeah, I don't think he feels guilt, but I just don't think that registers with him, because, he's got a lot, and he doesn't feel guilt about, being spurned by his cousin, because he's just going to go a different way. He's going to have a different, he's a different color apple, and because
he feels he's on the righteous path, actually, because he stood up for his friend Duncan and stood up against his terrible uncle. His uncle, right? The death of Baelor didn't affect him at all. And when he saw Dunk being sad, the cute thing is he did try to comfort Duncan. He gave him a hug, an awkward hug. And he said, "I don't blame you for Baelor's death." But I don't think Fossaway blamed anybody. Like, I think, honestly, he didn't care less about Baelor to begin with. So. And that's one character we do not know, but I'm pretty sure they are in the category of feeling no guilt whatsoever. And that would be Arian. I think Arian's in pain and suffering right now, but I think knowing Aaron, he's probably doubling down on his anger for Duncan. Like, I bet he hasn't changed his character whatsoever, but we don't know, because he had no speaking time at all the last episode. But I'm going to go off on what I don't think is a limit at all. And that's to say that Arian, I don't think, feels guilty about Baelor's death, about causing the trial. I think he feels that he was in the right for doing that, because he believes he's crazy and he believes he's the dragon in flesh. And when he saw a lowborn person making a play about killing the dragons, that he took that as treason. And I don't think he felt guilty about invoking the trial and not doing one-on-one, doing a 7. So he could have just handled Duncan himself, and which Baylor would not have been killed. But I don't think he feels guilty at all about involving everybody else.
Like you mentioned or alluded to in a previous episode, we know what happens to Aerion in the end based on a basically throwaway comment in the Game of Thrones series.
With Joffrey.
So, yes, by Joffrey. So even if you don't read the books or don't know what's going to happen, you might know from that Aerion, let's say, is not the type of person who would doubt himself. Mm-hmm. He doesn't have to worry about the imposter syndrome or self-doubt. That is not something that... Yeah. So that brings us to the end of this episode. And I think that where everybody leaves off, most people feeling guilty or being concerned about what's going to happen to them or where their future lies. But one person who was always optimistic was Arlen. And he said, I wonder what the morrow will bring. And as that's the name of the episode, The Morrow, I think it's a good way to leave this as we wrap up this first season, to say that we wonder what's coming up next. So what will the morrow bring? Please like and subscribe this video and check out our other videos and shorts on our channels.